There was either people crushing it or there were people getting crushed. There was not a lot of people in that middle ground, and that's where the need for the script kind of came in.
Welcome, everybody, to the How to Sell Insurance Podcast Sunglasses Edition. I am here with a couple of the baddest men on the planet. My name is Ryan Federico. This is Ashton Delango Lunde, and as always, joining us on a beautiful Wednesday, Mr. Grant Lieber. How you feeling today, Grant?
Today's phenomenal.
We have something really exciting to talk about, and I say really exciting for us insurance nerds, but it's really exciting for me because it's new information that I haven't heard coming from a master, Mr. Grant Lieber, who has absolutely dominated the kind of general life selling process, or the general life sales process, crushing numbers that you guys hear every week on the leaderboards. And so Grant is actually going to be talking to us about what he and another, I guess, smaller group of controlled, very highly profitable agents have found are the keys to success in working instant leads, working digital leads, working general life leads. And I can't wait to hear about it. But before we get into that, start us off with our question of the day, Ashton.
And I think we went over this last year with Grant. Oh, we can do it again.
Changed.
Yeah. So what's the most embarrassing story you have for selling insurance?
Okay, I remember last year we talked about the time I went into the guy's house. It was a hoarder. It was just, you couldn't see the floor. It was just full of trash.
Yeah.
3 feet high. So an embarrassing situation. There were definitely times where I rolled up to people's house. I was pretty convinced they were somebody different. And just kind of a very amateuristic lack of knowledge about who they were. But I don't know if that's super embarrassing. I think probably the biggest thing I've seen from clients is when you go into their house and they insist that you don't sit at the kitchen table. They insist that you sit at the couch.
Okay.
And the couch is sunken in, 75 people have been sitting there all day long on top, stacked on top of each other. It's way down. You've got the TV blasting and they're like, hey man, yeah, go ahead and talk. And they're staring at the TV, very clearly watching TV the whole time. You're in this just disgusting kind of environment and you're trying to kind of manipulate the situation to get it where you're actually in a position to help them. So I would say, the biggest ones in the field back when we actually used to meet with people were always the people that just always insisted, oh, I'm so sorry, my house is never like this. You're like, this is the cleanest your house has ever been, and that's terrible.
Have you ever been offered food at a house?
Many times.
What's the best thing you ever ate?
Oh, well, it's a good one. Probably barbecue. I mean, there's been many a times where some guys were smoking brisket, was over at their house, and it was on maybe a Saturday, or especially, this is another thing, one thing I miss about running appointments on holidays, when we used to do that in the field, is the Monday holiday, the Memorial Day, whatever the case may be. People are cooking and we call them and be like, I know you're probably gonna be cooking, grilling out on Memorial Day. Do you mind if I stop by and kind of go over the options? And they'll be like, absolutely. I'll be like, hey, make me a plate when I show up if you don't mind. And show up, they've got the full spread of stuff going on. So yeah, we've been fed a lot in the field.
I have a confession to make. And I wrote a lot of insurance person to person, and I've never been given food at anybody's house.
Wow.
A single time. I was running leads in California, right, where people are a little less welcoming. I'm kind of go get your own food sales guy. But there was a lot of people on my team who were in the South who would just tell me stories about getting fed all kinds of stuff and being invited over for dinner, and I never had that scenario happen. Full disclosure for everybody, I worked digital general life leads for about a year and then completely swore off of them and went right back into general or mortgage protection. I've been working direct mail mortgage protection for the last year to year and a half, maybe 2 years, and really excited to hear what Grant has to say about their process and their findings and what they've found is the best way to attack a general life lead. So let's just dive into it, Grant. Yeah, number one, I guess, why did we need something new? Why did we need a new process for general life leads? Didn't you have something that already worked?
We to be honest, we really didn't. We really didn't have a clear process. So when we first ran mortgage protection, from the very beginning, we had a script called a real script, rapport, emotion, assumption, and lock it down. We knew exactly what to do from the second we met with them, whether it was face-to-face or on Zoom or on the phone, all the way through getting their needs, writing the application, and getting it issued. And when it came to our second type of leads that kind of came out when mortgages kind of started drying up, the rates went really high, the refis kind of virtually went away, we had to start engaging some different types of leads. And so we did general life insurance. So instead of the general mortgage protection where they've got a home and they just purchase or refinance, They might have a need that's a younger person that wants $1 million of term life. They could be an older person that wants 10, 15, 20,000 a burial. And so with that lead system, we got a lot of very sporadic kind of training from people that were just trialing it. We didn't have kind of a corporate backed process for how to actually run through it. So really, Ryan, it came through like we just needed to know a clear and concise process, because people that have been in this business for several years, we can take a different lead that we've never ran before and we could, for the most part, figure it out, you know? But like for brand new agents coming in, like that's a tall task. So that was really where the need came from.
So and for anybody who doesn't know this, the only thing more difficult than like getting out of an audit from the IRS is getting a bunch of insurance salespeople to agree on one process that they all do and follow. And so like, how was that process? And just talking to people like Ashton and talking to people who have had success on their own with the machete, hacking down, the plants in front of everybody for how to sell General Life.
Yeah.
How'd that go? Was it easy to kind of form an opinion where everybody was doing the same thing, or was it contentious? Like,
well, let me give you the full lay of the land on the whole process. So what happened is one of our VPs of distribution, Mike Resma, he came to us and he basically, and when I say us, there's 3 people that I want to make sure we're kind of part of it. There's myself, but there's also Paige Durgan and Gino Locklear. And basically he came to us and he said, you 3 are amongst the top closers of General Life leads in the entire company. And we would like you to come together and put together a script that we can teach everybody so that we can figure out how to make sure we get, the results you're having to everybody else. And there were so many people, Ashton included, that were having phenomenal results with it. But what we found as they were doing these numbers is it was kind of like a 2-class system. There was either people crushing it or there were people getting crushed. There was not a lot of people in that middle ground, and that's where the need for the script kind of came in. So basically, he had the 3 of us huddle up and say, hey, we need you to come together and do what you're going to do. And what was interesting is at that time, we all actually had our own version of it, of the script. And there was an agent that called me one day and said, hey, can you do a General Life presentation? And I just kind of rambled on what I do, and he dictated it, turned it into a script, and he then turned around and gave it to me. And he's like, hey, here's your script, just if you ever want to have it. So I was like, that's cool. And so I had that script that I brought to the table. Paige had her script, and then Gino had his. And the main denominator with all 3 is that they had different focuses on different parts of it. So my focus was very in the analytical logic side of like asking them questions about, why they need the insurance, defining a specific number. Gino's was very why based, similar to like the mortgage protection why. It was very emotional about, did something happen in your family recently that made you think about insurance? Was there a recent death? He really dug in that way. And then Paige was it was important to her to get really good at digging into the health, because one thing we've noticed with General Life leads, as opposed to mortgage protection, is they're not always as forthcoming with their health conditions. So the 3 of us, we came together and, Resma kind of gave us a little bit of a tall task of kind of saying, hey, you've got about 2 or 3 weeks to get this together and create a pilot program of other agents that are running General Life leads, and they're going to start running your script, and we're going to see how it goes. You got to put your money where your mouth is. And, we actually put it together in just about 2 weeks. We got kind of the first draft of what we called our GPG script, the Gino Page Grant script. And we got about 6 to 8 agents that we all identified in our agencies were running consistent leads. And we gave it to them, and then we waited for the results. And the results were, this is awkward, and this is a learning curve, and this is new, and this is different. And then we made a couple tweaks, and then the feedback became, this is incredible. I'm getting to an application in 12 minutes. I'm getting to an application in 20 minutes. And we continue to just refine it and boil it down to its essence of where it is now. And after several weeks of kind of beta testing it, going back to the drawing board, making little tweaks, we've gotten very, very consistent results from all of these agents. The testimonials have been pretty incredible. There's Tom Ellison is a guy who he's writing 30 to 40,000 a month on General Life leads using entirely our script. He's been very kind to us in kind of how our process has helped him, and it's been a game changer for the people that have been piloting it.
So, like, what were the things that were the same though? So I get that you all focus on different things. That makes sense. We're all individuals. Everybody's going to focus on different things. What were the things that were the same that you were all doing? When you came together.
So the things that were always consistent with the 3 of us was a very good role and purpose. We very clearly defined kind of who we were, what products we had access to. Kind of that whole intro was very similar. And we also were very similar when it came to how we showed the options. We all kind of agreed that we sort of were going to, either show We kind of showed a top option and we kind of worked our way down. So that was very consistent. The only really big differences, honestly, were just that we didn't have it segregated with the why and the fact finding in their own kind of unique sections. It was kind of all one thing with kind of the other scripts that we brought to the table. And so that was just the one thing we really had to kind of hash out. And you are going to get a script that actually has a link that says, hey, if you didn't fully get a complete why with the client, here's a fact finding that helps you dictate or helps you kind of get exactly a specific amount of coverage they need. Or if you need help explaining the difference between term and permanent coverage, here's a separate script. So we created one general script that goes from role and purpose, why, to showing options in 12 minutes. And then we created a different couple of scripts. If maybe you're asking them, what had you looking into it? And you're like, I don't know, sounded like a good idea. I saw an ad on Facebook. Then we have a full fact finding, right? We have a full fact finding that can help you define, okay, well, why did you want this? Was it income replacement? Was it debt elimination? Was it funeral? Or was it legacy? And then of those 4 things, we define each one. Okay, it was income. How much do you make a year? 50,000. How many years would you like to protect your family? Well, indefinitely. Okay, but let's kind of boil it down. Would 3 or 5 years be enough? Yeah. Well, there's, 3 years times 50,000, there's 150,000 of coverage.
Yep.
Do you have mortgage debt? Yeah, I have 100,000 on mortgage debt. Well, there's 100,000. Now I found a reason behind getting 250,000 of coverage. Because we all know the big challenge that life insurance agents have is they don't really take the time to sell based on value. They sell based on price.
Yeah.
So this whole script was really around how can we sell based on value in 20 minutes or less.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to hear Ashton's take on this because Ashton, I mean, you've worked general life leads to a lot of success, way longer than I have for sure. But does some of this sound familiar? Are you doing some of the same things when you're writing these general life leads for people?
Yeah, Gino for me was one of those people that really helped me going through like, hey, what does that script need to look like? When they pick the phone, what is that initial conversation? If you one call closed, what does it sound like? And Gino was very integral for me in developing my process and my system of how I do general life leads and now just one call close everything. So yeah, a lot of the same similar things that they're talking through. I probably don't go as deep with general life leads in the why, in the finances. They tend to be more transactional type leads.
Yeah.
Of, hey, I just want insurance, and here's kind of the amount I'm looking for, here's the budget, and then you're done. But yeah, going through that why, I think makes it even better. And now having a clear process that we're going to be able to go through, I think is going to be very, very helpful. And I know you talked about those agents that kind of went through that pilot program.
Yeah.
So do you know, I'm sure you probably do, or it's written down somewhere. Do you know the statistics of like, hey, here's what they were doing before?
Yeah.
And then, man, they started using this new system, this new scripting, etc. Like, I know you mentioned Tom.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's the results now. It's like, well, what does that look like so far?
Yeah, so the big things that we wanted to track when we did this pilot is we wanted to track what their close ratios were before and after using this. We wanted to track their time in the appointment, how quick they got to an application. And then we wanted to also track what the product types were. Are people predominantly doing term, or is it permanent, or is it IULs? So what we basically found is that most people that were in the pilot were closing at about a 40 to 50% ratio of the families they met with.
Before or after?
Before. So if they're sitting down with 10, they're helping 4 or 5 out of 10. And after taking the new general life lead, none of them were doing under 70%, 7 out of 10. So we saw, new script. So we saw about a 30% increase in the close ratio with the agents, and we saw about a 50 to 75% decrease in the time they spent in the appointment. We had a lot of people spending 35, 45 an hour, and we're talking about before getting into an app. We all know you get into an app, you're helping them sign it, maybe that can take a little bit long, but like we had people that were 45 minutes to an hour before an app. Now we've got 15, 20, maybe some people 30 minutes before the app, so tremendously cutting down on the time getting into it.
So you mentioned, and I want to talk about one thing that Ashton said, and then I want to come to this topic. Let's just think about it for a minute. You talked about time a lot.
Yeah.
12 minutes, 22 minutes, and so it seems like time is a huge factor in this, and I want to know why. But before we talk about that, Ashton said something about the leads being a little bit more transactional, and I think in my experience, what's happened, at least what I've seen in my agency, what I've seen with a lot of other agents, when they're working these digital leads, is if you have a transactional relationship with the client, the client will have transactional commitment to you. And so we get a lot more cancellations, you get a lot more chargebacks, you get those things that nobody wants.
Yeah.
You get them at a higher level most of the time because we're just keeping it in this transactional level and not building a lot of emotional value around why they want insurance. And sometimes it can be a little weird because we've all been working mortgage protection. We have this real easy door to walk in. It's like, well, what would happen if you couldn't pay for the mortgage? You'd lose your house. Well, if you don't have that and you create it yourself, how do we do that? And I think this is where a lot of agents got lost in this no man's land of not really knowing how to create that value, not really knowing that they need to create that value because they have a buyer, they're salespeople. The buyer's like, I want this and I can pay this. Okay, great, let's put it together. But then they got all those cancellations on the back end because there wasn't any value around what they were buying. And so now with this script is building so much more value, I could see why the results are what they are. Good.
Yeah, and I mean, even before we haven't even seen the script, me and you at least. So, I mean, without even knowing what it looks like, I mean, if we go back to what we talked about on another episode with Chris Clark and Josh Manzano, it's building that rapport. So, for instance, like with me, in my general life leads, I think I've had one cancellation in probably 13, 14 months. I don't get a lot of cancellations. I might get some declines because, like you said, they're not telling their health. But I think to date, I've had 3. So in 8 months, 8 months, I've had 3 declines out of every policy I've put through because I'm doing really good underwriting on the front end. But still, I don't get those cancellations because I'm building that rapport through. Like, hey, who are the kids? What are their names? Oh, tell me about, and I'm building that rapport and I'm building that connection with them in the appointment. And it can still, even though it's more transactional based, I'm pulling those nuggets out in order to build that connection with them while I'm going through it.
For sure. Yeah. That's huge. I'm sure that's in the script as well, like how to get into that. But like, let's talk about the times, man.
Yeah, like time require tons. So I think it starts with just understanding, how the lead was generated. And this is something that we were talking about a little bit before this, is like the lead was generated based on someone that saw an ad on a social media platform. We live in a microwave society. Consumer behavior has massively changed in the several years that we've all been here. And I remember 5-6 years ago when I ran the field, there were things that we would never do then that we really promote now, and vice versa, right? Just because buying behavior changes and people have to adapt. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that these people are clicking on a link, trying to get information and trying to do stuff quick. And if they don't do it and they don't buy it from us, they're going to move right on to the next person. So there's an incredible urgency to get to these leads immediately. That's why when we first got these leads, we were told to call them between 4 to 24 hours, let it sit for 4 hours. Now, if we let it sit for 4 minutes, it's too long, right? Like, so that's just a massive change. So the reason that time was so crucial to us when we were creating this process was that we wanted to make sure that you could build rapport, you could define the value, and that you could help them understand how it's going to impact their family in a concise amount of time, because they don't want to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on the phone with you. They don't. They want to be able to get this done in minutes. In fact, if they could, they'd prefer to not even talk to you on the phone. Yeah. And there's been policies I'm sure we've all written over text. And it's a few and far between. I think it's going to start becoming more and more common, but people, they want to text, they don't want to talk to people, they don't want to do phone calls, they'd rather do things that are digital and don't require them to have that interaction. They want more automation. And so that's where we've talked extensively about switchboard and the value of automation. We've talked about kind of how the leads are coming through there immediately. You're talking, you could call somebody that's a general life lead that may have requested information 7 minutes ago, like it's just within minutes. And so this script really came through. The timing of it was so that we could adhere to the buying behavior of consumers today, but also, like you talked about, have those elements where we had a very complete health. We do great field underwriting in this. We have a very complete why. We have a very complete fact finding if you need it, so that you can get through all those complete steps, but you don't have to spend an hour and a half doing that.
Yeah. Guys, so huge. So huge. If I was a new agent, let's not even say new agent. Let's say I'm me. I'm working mortgage protection. I'm like, general life sucks. It's for the birds. I want these badass A leads. Is all I want. Why should I be working digital leads now with this script? Like, why should I change my mind and come over to work these? You've had a ton of success with them. So, of course, how much money you can make doesn't hurt the argument. But why should I be getting good at this now instead of just being stuck in my old ways of doing mortgage protection only?
I think the main factor that I would look at is what is your ROI on your time and what is your ROI on your lead investment? A mortgage protection A lead is the most expensive lead that we have. Assuming it's a mail-in, right?
Yep.
And so there's a ton of value in mortgage protection mail-in leads. There's a ton of value in mortgage protection call-in leads, and as well as our bonus lead program. Where you don't have as much value is in the ROI on your time. What's your ROT, I guess? Return on time, right?
Sure.
So if I look at, buying, 10 or 15 or 20 mortgage protection, either A leads or call-in leads, I have to dial through them. You can still use Switchboard with them, but I think we can all agree that those leads, we call them analog leads, do require you to spend more time calling them and working through them.
Yep.
So, and then if you look at kind of taking 10 or 15 or 20 digital leads, whether that's Lighthouse or Razor Ridge or any other digital lead types, you're going to see that you're able to book appointments in probably half the time, and most of that time is spent just texting. So I would say number one, from the initial appointment setting, if you're looking at that different lead type, I think it saves you time. I think it's very efficient. I mean, I was at a team retreat in Oklahoma City probably a year ago, and I was at Topgolf, and I was on my phone. I had 10 razor leads hit. I booked 6 of them while in the bay hitting golf balls. You could never do that with mortgage protection leads.
For sure.
So that's the biggest thing for me is I am, as someone who's building an agency, recruiting and mentoring people, I needed to get my time back. I need to be able to produce full time and get my time back. And digital leads was the answer for me and the automation we had through Switchboard. And in terms of just kind of why people should maybe take to heart, that's kind of the first part of why you should do digital leads. But like the ROI will come if you do follow the steps on this script, because the numbers are there, the numbers are proven. And when we roll this out and we've got 1,000 people doing it instead of 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 people doing it, I think the numbers will speak for themselves.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say because this is how everybody's going to be buying insurance, in the next 5 years. Yeah. And how like this more and more people are becoming digital minded, requesting online, wanting text messages, wanting, virtual appointments and things like that. And the idea of an analog lead is probably going to be a thing of the past, in the near future.
Yeah.
So get good at it now.
That's a fair point. I mean, because people responding to mailers, whether you call in or whether you send a letter back, it's a very foreign concept, like to younger people, I will say, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, we're not people that would probably respond to any type of lead or request that way. That's not how we would pursue something. It's in fact, when we get those mail-in leads, 75, 80% of the time, they're 58 and older.
Yeah, for sure.
These are not, they're older 20, 30, 40-year-olds. The 20, 30, 40-year-olds are doing that. And the 50, 60, 70-year-olds, they're learning the technology. Like, we've never had in history a big of a kind of like time where the divide is being shortened with the older people and the younger people, because older people are having to learn the technology. They have to. When COVID hit, like, if your 75-year-old grandma, she had to learn how to use Zoom or she's not talking to her grandkids anymore. She's not going to church. Yeah, they're not going to church, have to learn it. So they've been forced to learn these skills, and now their buying behavior is changing to adapt to that.
Makes sense. Ashton, any final thoughts on, are you excited about working this script, man? Or any thoughts you want to give to anybody?
I'm excited to see it. Absolutely. I think my final question would be is if there's a new agent, or an agent that's new to starting on digital leads, how do you recommend that process? Is it just go buy like 40 digital leads and just go crazy? Is it get like 5 a week, 10 a week? Like, what is that process for someone that wants to get started on digital leads?
So I would say that the metric that I've always found to be a winner is get yourself in a position to book 15 appointments every week. That is the proven method to have consistent success here. So if I'm looking at digital leads, and I'm somebody brand new, we understand that there is a learning curve to those, just like there's a learning curve to any leads. And I will say that the digital leads, you've got to be quick to them because they are not as forgiving as the analog leads. That is one thing I will say, because people want it quick, right? So if you don't get it quick or you miss that initial opportunity, you might not have the same kind of grace you may have with an analog mortgage protection lead. So my recommendation would not be to shove all your chips in the middle on digital leads. It would be to maintain a balance. The balance I like to recommend people do is get 10 digital leads and then anywhere between 30 to 50 bonus leads. That puts you in a position, with your 10 digital to get about 6 appointments, most of them booked over text. And then with you dialing through the mortgage protection, give you the ability to book another 6 or 8 or 9 to get to your 15 a week.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. If you want to see this script as well, you kind of have to be a part of our company. because we developed it, right? I shouldn't say we. He developed it along with a couple other amazing agents. We are here at our national conference in Denver, Colorado at the Quality Engage conference. We're super excited to see all the new rollouts that are happening. And if you are looking for a company that consistently invests in things like this, making it better for you as an agent, if you're looking for people who consistently invest in you as an agent, you should probably take a look at what we're doing here. And if you're already with us, you know you're in the best place. Jump in the summit, get this script, start learning it. I'm sure we're going to have tons of trainings and recordings and stuff like that on our sales webinars. But Graham, man, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Script tomorrow for sure, man. It'll be fun.
Heck yeah. Later, everybody. See ya.